There's upheaval at the City Council as Todd Gloria is replaced as Council President by Sherry Leitner in a maneuver that favors Republicans. SANDAG faces a roadblock in its plans for more freeways and decides to appeal a judge's invalidation of the Regional Transportation Plan. And the Padres deal for a big-name hitter in the winter meetings here, while the Chargers' playoff hopes dim. I'm Mark Sauer, and the KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome. It's Friday, December 12th. I'm Mark Sauer. And joining me at the Roundtable today are KPBS Metro reporter Taryn Mento. Hi, Taryn.
Hi, Mark.
Good to have you here. Andrew Keats, reporter with Voice of San Diego. Hi, Andy.
How's it going, Mark?
And sportscaster Jay Paris, 1090 Sports Radio. You start that job on Monday, Jay.
Sure do. Hope I don't mess it up the first day.
There you go.
Thanks
Good to have you here.
All right.
Well, San Diegans had gotten pretty used to seeing Todd Gloria in a position of leadership. He was interim mayor after former Mayor Bob Filner resigned in disgrace, and of course he was president of the City Council the last few years. Well, not anymore. Gloria was ousted by soft-spoken council veteran Sherry Leitner, a fellow Democrat. And Taryn, walk us through this. Who wanted Mr. Leitner replaced and why?
Well, Todd Gloria is very popular, and
I'm sorry, who wanted Mr. Gloria replaced by Leitner and why?
And you saw that at the City Council meeting when they were going to take the vote. There were about 30 public speakers coming up urging the rest of the council members to keep him on because there were these rumors that some Republican council members may be voting him out in favor for Sherry Leitner.
Now, we should note they have the minority. It's 5-4 Democrats, 2 Republicans, so they had to get some cooperation there.
Right, and so what ended up happening is the final vote. Well, there was an initial vote for Todd Gloria. They did take the vote, and it was the Democrats for Gloria, Republicans said no, and Sherry Leitner also voted no. So and then they took another vote, and it became 7-2. We had some Democrats switch over and support Leitner, and so ultimately Gloria didn't get the votes that he needed for that.
So by then the hand-wringing was on the wall, so Gloria voted for himself for president, and David Alvarez stuck with
another
liberal Democrat, and that was it. Everybody else voted, and Sherry Leitner is now the president. And now, does this enhance the Republicans' power, or are we going to see, even though they're in a minority, they have some leverage now?
Right. That's you know, some of the responsibilities of council president do include appointing committee members and committee chairs, and that's something that we could see if there is any change up there. Will Republican council members be getting key roles on some committees? And should be expected to see that later today, and then that'll be brought up on the meeting on Monday.
So as council president, let's talk about that job a little bit. There's some power there. The council president, as you say, appoints these committee chairs who have their own agendas. They decide and work through the committees what issues actually come to the council and come for public debate and a public vote. And then they also the council president sets the agenda for the council itself on those weekly meetings, right?
Right. So there's a lot of direction with how those things can go. Something can possibly not get picked up and put on the docket, so it may not be discussed. And then also who leads these committee chairs can ultimately, if votes come down on the committees, even the committee chair has the vote that can move it on to council. So there is some ability to decide the direction of the council in this role.
So, Andy, let me ask you this. Todd Gloria, as we said in the open, has been very visible. He was the interim mayor for a time. Of course, the immediate past council president. Some people think in 2016, not that far off now, he could be a real Democratic threat to incumbent Republican mayor Kevin Faulconer here. But now does he step out of the limelight a little bit? Does this hurt his chances going forward in his political career?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly had a very high profile when he was council president. When, at the opening of Comic-Con, when they did the Batman introduction, it was both Faulconer and Gloria who ziplined.
They were zipline buddies.
Yeah, right.
What the heck happened here?
And now next year, that'll just be Mayor Faulconer, right? Todd Gloria won't be.
You don't think Sherry will be out there ziplining with him?
Right. So I think there is something to diminishing his stature ahead of 2016. Now, whatever goodwill or popularity he's earned is probably already in the bank. I don't think you can retroactively take that from him. So to a certain extent, I wonder how limited that is. It's worth noting, though, that under Council President Gloria, Republicans still got a lot of good positions as committee chairs. Lori Zaff was in charge of Land Use and Housing Committee, an extremely powerful committee. So it's not as though they've been shut out under Gloria. So that is an interesting aspect to this, and to that extent, I wonder how much they've really gained with Sherry in in the first place. I mean, she was right there with him on the minimum wage vote, on
Right.
the Barrio Logan vote, on the linkage fee vote. All these really partisan issues. She has been standing there right along with Democrats, and the areas where she parts ways with Todd are actually where she's less aligned with the Republicans. She is very much more anti-development than Todd is. Todd is usually more of a friend to things like the Business Industry Association or the Building Industry Association. So I actually wonder if we could see in the next 2 years this come back to be not such a great deal for Republicans if she flexes those same muscles.
Yeah, now, Terrence, Sherry Lightner describes herself as a moderate here, an independent.
Yeah.
Todd Gloria is more associated with progressive liberal wing of the council. A big change, or we're going to have to wait and see?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a wait and see scenario. I mean, I spoke with her earlier this morning. Some of the things she's looking forward to getting, taken care of this year is looking at the police salaries. That's a topic, but also looking at infrastructure and climate action plan. And these are things that were talked about as being priorities when Todd Gloria was council president.
So either one, whoever's president, even if a Republican were president at this point, those are the main key issues, right? I mean, retaining police, the infrastructure, et cetera.
Right. Oh.
I'm just wondering why is she more attractive than Todd in that position? What's the rubber hitting the road there?
The rumor, or some public speakers actually brought this up, is that by removing Todd Gloria out of that focus role, maybe he's not going to have as much of a platform to stand on if he did want to challenge, be the Democratic challenger for the race for mayor.
Down
and
the road,
Sherry Lightner has just a little bit, and we saw that after the council meeting, after they changed seats, she just adjourned the council. There wasn't any statement, and she left without speaking to any of the media. Todd Gloria stayed and spoke to media, spoke to members of the public. There were people standing there waiting in line to hug him.
Was it a pretty tense meeting there? Set the scene for us.
It was very, there was dozens of public speakers going up there, and it was at the end when the vote was taken and Sherry Lightner was chosen as the next council president, there were some booing. There was, and when people, Todd Gloria put his hand up and they stopped, but there were people cheering. There were signs that say, "I stand with Todd Gloria," people wearing purple shirts. So it was, and when the vote actually came down, that Gloria lost, and looked like the council members were all looking to each other, not sure where to go next, because the next move was to give a nomination to Sherry Lightner.
Well, we do have a little. No, we're not going to go that way. Let me shift to a different thing now. As long as we're on the city council, there's one other aspect of the inauguration that happened this week when they all take their oath and formally take office here, and it's in a big kind of ceremony in a big room downtown, as you might expect. But there was a protest there. Explain what happened.
Right. Well, first, when arriving, there were protesters outside that were chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." Very symbolic of the national movement related to the shootings of unarmed black men by police. And then they came into the Golden Hall and stood off to the side. And throughout the speeches, they would silently change gestures with their hands around their throat, symbolizing the death of Eric Garner. Hands up, don't shoot, Michael Brown. And then they also staged a die-in, which is lying down on the ground. And it was very silent. There wasn't any noise from them until after the ceremony, and then they chanted and marched around the room.
But then you overheard something and actually recorded a member of Council Member Lori Zaff's staff.
Right, and so after the ceremony, I had gone up to Lori Zaff, waiting to interview her about the ceremony and the upcoming council vote, which was going to be about the president vote later that day. I had my press badge on, my recorder out, waiting in a line of people at the front of the room. And I overheard a staff member of hers say, "Did you see those expletive idiots with their hands up? I wanted to shoot them." And she was wearing a name tag, so that's how I was able to determine who she was. And we went to Zapp later on in that day with this, and she.
Yeah, what was her response to this?
She immediately, quite stunned, which very caught off guard by this.
When you confronted the council.
Right, when I asked her about these comments, and she immediately tried to explain that her opinions was that they had the right to be there, the protesters had the right to be there, and they were not disruptive, and that she was going to speak to this staffer And then we followed up again later, and we received a statement that it's being handled as a personnel matter.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll all be reporting, Taryn and Andy and all the City Hall folks as we go forward here with Sherry Leitner and the new change, the palace coup, as it were. All right, we're going to move on now. SANDAG is one of those obscure public agencies that most people don't think about if they even know it exists. But decisions made by SANDAG, that's the San Diego Association of Governments, the region's transportation planning entity, they can profoundly affect all of us for decades to come. And so it is with its controversial 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, which has run into some trouble. Let's start, Andy, by laying out that plan. What is it? What's in there? What are the high points?
Right. So it's a 40-year plan for all sorts of transportation-oriented projects in the entire county. So everything from your trolley extensions and your new public transit offerings to freeway widening and local roads. It's a $215 billion plan, many projects laid out all the way for the next 40 years. So, it's got new trolley lines, it's got freeway widening on the I-5, it's got street repaving and things like that. It's pretty much runs the gamut of every transportation project you could think of in the region.
Okay, so the guidelines here, I mean, what they come up with, what they emphasize and what they don't emphasize. In other words, if there's a ton of money for new freeways, that means we're all going to be driving cars. If there's more emphasis on public transportation and bike lanes and all, we're going to go the other way, maybe not burn so much fuel. So what's in the plan that's got environmentalists so upset?
Right, so environmentalists and transit advocates sued a few years ago on the basis that this plan had too much of an emphasis on widening freeways and extending sort of car-focused transportation.
Too car-friendly.
Yeah, too car-friendly. And so they based it on these state requirements, a series of state laws that spelled out what the requirements for planning agencies was to demonstrate greenhouse gas reduction levels. And their argument was you did not follow these requirements. And the first judge 2 years ago ruled with the litigants and said, you're right, this plan is deficient.
And we should be clear, that was at the Superior Court level, the local level here.
That was the local level. And then just earlier this month, we had an appellate court came back and upheld that same ruling.
Because SANDAG didn't like that original ruling, and they appealed to the appellate court.
Right. And so SANDAG had to face the decision now, do we just take our lumps and go back to the drawing board and rewrite the plan, or do we keep fighting this out? And that's what they ultimately decided to do. So they're appealing to the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court that is, if the state Supreme Court decides to take up the plan, they'll have ultimate say over whether this plan is legitimate. And that's important not only for San Diego and what happens with its transportation plan, but SANDAG is in many ways the first agency to bring a plan like this forward since all those state laws were passed. So it's sort of the guinea pig that all the other state agencies like it across the state are looking to understand what sort of requirements they're operating
So
under.
the state government says we're going to be environment friendly, we're going to try to limit the use of fossil fuels, we're quite conscious of climate change here. California is going to do something about it. It's a big state. And SANDAG comes forth with this plan, and this is kind of the first test.
Yeah, and we don't need to get too far into the nitty-gritty legal details, but basically what the major issue is whether it's just this assembly, this legislature passed laws, or this legislature passed laws and an executive order by Arnold Schwarzenegger, which actually went above and beyond those laws. So there was a claim that that's just an executive order. It doesn't have authority over things that go through the legislature, and both two courts have now ruled that it in fact does.
So I was just going to say, before we get a little farther, and I want to come back to Terrence's question, but who is on the SANDAG board? Tell our audience who these folks are.
Council members and mayors from all over the county.
Okay, cities and governments all over the county.
Every charter city or in this county, and the city of San Diego has 2 seats, and the county has 2 seats.
And the county does. Okay, Taryn?
I was just going to ask, what's the argument that makes the plan as it's written right now so important in order to push back against now 2 court rulings? What are they highlighting in there about that?
As in, what does the board like about the plan so much?
Right. What's so important there that they feel that they need to push this farther?
What's so dear to them on this plan?
Well, so I mean, it's one of 2 things. For some people, certainly, they like the plan. They would prefer that it emphasize things that assist car travelers. I mean, if you're a council member from Escondido, that is more important to you than because that's the lives of most of your constituents.
Yeah, you interviewed a La Mesa councilwoman who's also an attorney who made that very point.
Right. And then the other thing is Todd Gloria, who kind of by sheer force of will forced the city into pursuing its climate action plan, its own plan to deal with greenhouse gas emissions. He nonetheless voted in favor of the appeal, and his rationale, he said, is that it's important for the Supreme Court to provide clarity for the rest of the state on what these requirements actually are. So, it's going to be something between those two things.
So it was a 20-1 vote. Sounds pretty overwhelming. And you, being the good reporter that you are, you thought, let's find that one guy who stood up and voted against this. And who was he, and what did he have to say?
It's actually fascinating because the one guy who voted against it is just an alternate who wasn't even supposed to be there anyway. You know, his first time he was ever at SANDAG board.
Yeah.
So, and his name's Chuck Lowry. He's a deputy mayor from Oceanside, and he basically just said, you know, we can't keep extending freeways every time they fill up. They fill up with traffic, and we extend it, and then they fill up again, and we extend it again. We need to start providing more alternatives. But I do think it reveals an interesting dynamic on the SANDAG board that the only person who's willing to step out of line and say something so different is a guy who's not really on the board in the first place.
Yeah, you had a story just now posted today about the kind of the culture there, and I don't know if lockstep's too strong a word, but they tend to hang together, these birds of a feather.
Yeah, it's not just that they hang together. What was interesting to me is, like, you know, when you're on a city council, you view that as a position where you are elected and you go out of your way to push policy objectives that are favorable to you and your constituents. You view yourself as a legislator, and then suddenly they...
And you're not afraid of robust debate.
You know, that you see votes split on partisan lines all the time at city councils all over the county. And then suddenly they get on the SANDAG board, and it's almost always unanimous. And you don't hear people speaking out and saying, why does SANDAG do it this way? Why does SANDAG... And so I just wanted to try to figure out exactly why that was. And, you know, some people said basically, you know, there's a fear that if you're the loudest voice, then suddenly your city might come out on the losing end of some funding decisions.
Okay, so some backdoor politicking there going on.
Yeah, and of course there are, you know, SANDAG would reject that framing, and there doesn't seem to be any easily available evidence that suggests that that's the case. And in fact, National City Mayor Ron Morrison told me, you know, the reason it's so unanimous is because we have a robust committee system and we have subcommittees of those committees, and we kind of do all the vetting through that process, and the decisions are more or less already made by the time they get to the
Which nobody but inside baseball people go to, and hardly anybody watches the whole SANDAG board, so that doesn't give me a great feeling in terms of transparency.
Oh, it doesn't? You don't like the fact that the decisions are made before they come to the full board? That doesn't...
The phrase smoke-filled room comes to mind somehow. I don't know. All right, well, we got a few seconds left on this. Let me ask you, any idea if the State Supreme Court will take it up? It sounds, as you said earlier, an important issue, and it might be kind of a set of guideposts for the rest of the state.
I've talked to a couple people who are more familiar with this than I am, and they all seem to expect that they will, that they would be very surprised if they didn't.
Okay, so they'll take it up, they'll air it and give it a full go, and then we'll have to see, and I'm sure we'll be reporting on that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on now. San Diego is hosting baseball's winter meeting this week. They're just wrapping up before the rains came, and the Padres, for once, are in the thick of things. They made a big trade with their arch rivals, the Dodgers, up the road. Jay, start by explaining for maybe some folks who aren't, baseball fanatics and hot stove leaguers, what exactly are the winter meetings, and why are they exciting for the people who watch baseball?
Well, the winter meetings, annual event, all the general managers, all the managers, really all the baseball organizational people, they're all in one place and under one roof for 2 or 3 days.
So it's a big bazaar.
Big bazaar.
A lot of trading, a lot of
horse. Talk about smoke-filled rooms.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of posturing, but a lot of stuff does get done because, you know, the text messages and talking to somebody on the phone, you finally get face-to-face. And the meetings were here in San Diego for the first time in a couple decades, and the Padres wanted to make a splash, and I'm not just talking about the rain.
Okay. Well, the Padres have been, not only they had some losing seasons, and San Diego fans over time are used to losing seasons, but in the past we always had Tony Gwynn, we always had some exciting players. They just haven't been exciting lately here. Now, they made a big trade with the Dodgers. Are they exciting? Did they get a big slugger? Is it going to be something new this season?
They got a big slugger. They needed somebody in their lineup where you didn't get up and go get a hot dog when you came to bat. And it's been a long time since...
Now they only have 8 of those.
So
how much can you eat?
So who'd they get, and what's he
Matt Kemp, slugger, outfielder from the Dodgers.
Bonafide home run hitter.
A bonafide hitter, a thread in the lineup, a batter you have to tiptoe around if you're an opposing pitcher. 3 years ago, he was arguably the best player in baseball, 30-plus homers, 120 ribbies, and maybe would have won the MVP if Ryan Braun didn't with Milwaukee, who later proved to be using performance-enhancing drugs.
Right.
So it's a big deal.
Top star at that time. Yeah.
Top star, and let's just look he's been injured the last couple of years, but last year came on really strong. 25 home runs last year. He had 17 home runs after the All-Star break. Yasmani Grandal, who went to the Dodgers, he led the Padres with 15 all year.
Yeah, well, tell us what we gave up. A good young catcher, as you mentioned.
Right.
Grandal.
A good catcher whose potential the Padres think might have played out himself. He was busted for PEDs as well, and he didn't quite come back the same player as he was before. Also had a tough knee injury. So he hit about 225 last year. I think the Padres stole one, to tell you.
Do you? What do you think, Andy? Is it a good deal for the Padres?
I'm going to part ways with you. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
we got debate here. We're not the SANDAG.
No, Matt Kemp is unquestionably a good player, and I think the best case to be made for it is that he's a star. Padres fans want a reason to be excited, and simply trotting out guys that are low paid and not very much household names aren't really going to do that. And you know, Matt Kemp used to date Rihanna. This is
oh my,
a celebrity.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
we can go to the ballpark and see Rihanna in the stands.
Right. So,
they won't use her walk-up music when he's going to the plate, though. I guarantee.
And my wife tells me a very handsome man. This Matt Kemp. But in any case, you know, he's coming up on his 30 seasons. He's on his age 30 season. He's under contract until 34. He's going to be paid $80 million during that time, and he's already had injury history throughout his 20s. I think we paid a lot for the name, and the production that he has done in the past is unfortunately going to remain in the record books for the Dodgers and not translate to the Padres.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think you look at his last performance, which was after the All-Star break, 17 home runs, that ankle and shoulders usually right. He's playing the game. He's not much of a defender. You're right there. But he is at 30, and if the Dodgers are going to pitch in $32 million toward paying him, I think you got to get something, and you got to give something.
Well, let me ask this: beyond the Matt Kemp of the world, I look at a city like Detroit coming out of bankruptcy here. They were almost set a record for futility just 10 years ago. Now the perennial contenders here. The Padres, America's finest city, new stadium, you know, big fan base and big metro area here, and we're just losing team after losing team. What's going on? How can a team like that rebuild and come off the mat, and the Padres just never seem to become a contender?
Well, a lot of it is that the Padres played in the NL West against the rich boys, the Dodgers and Giants and Diamondbacks to a degree. They can never get a hitter here. You know, the blueprint, the template for Padre baseball was good pitching, strong defense, big yard.
Big stadium.
Marine layer. It's hard to get a home run after 8 o'clock.
It's cool and damp down there.
Right. It's 8 o'clock or before. So that's a great idea because the sluggers cost a lot of money. And if you don't have a lot of money to spend, you go the
pitching,
you go pitching.
Defense,
But it's hard to cheer a double play. You know, if a guy hits one over the fence, everybody knows to jump up and dance a little bit. So let's face it, it's baseball, it's sports, it's entertainment. And it was getting boring down there, and they're hoping Matt can give them a little jolt.
Well, and you know, we've got to do something to get the ticket sales going and get some revenue, because the only way to contend in the game today is just too many big salaries, too many big rosters in other cities, as you say.
Yeah, it's there's plenty of money out there in baseball. I know a lot of people want to keep writing it off, but they've never been more successful.
Well, let's shift to football here, because we only have a couple of minutes left. I did want to move on to the Chargers here. You said on this show at the start of the season this could be a pivotal year if they contend, if they actually got in deep in the playoffs, maybe the Super Bowl, maybe that dream of getting a new stadium could be convincing to the voters and all. They got a tough stretch here. They lost a tough game the other day. Where do we sit now late in the season? You
know, they sit pretty good, unlike last year where they needed to win and have the people above them collapse. You know, they are the number 6 and final seed for the American Football Conference for the playoffs. They got to win out, and they got Denver Broncos, Peyton Manning this week, then at San Francisco, at Kansas City.
Toughest schedule in the league down the stretch.
It's a tough schedule, but if you're playoff worthy, you got to play them and you got to win them. So they lost their 3-game winning streak last week against the Patriots, but they usually play Peyton pretty well. It's going to be a good game Sunday.
Well, and the coach here is taking some heat for some game management and clock management and decisions here. Without getting too much into the nitty gritty, has he got to win, or will he be gone and be replaced?
No, he's got a little equity from flipping them last year and getting them to the playoffs. And you know, the Spanos don't like to pay money to people who aren't working for him, so he's not going anywhere. His feet's been put to the fire a little bit on some game management stuff, and that's what makes sports so great. There's no right or wrong, and you can debate it all day.
And, I mean, after all, the mismanaged games are part of the Chargers' DNA after the Norv years. This is what we do here. We mismanage games, and we make poor decisions, and we stick with those coaches, and we stick with those decisions for years.
Yeah, we're talking about Norv Turner, of course, the coach. Been second-guessing. Well, that's part of the fun. Baseball, football, the fans love to get into it here. How have they done at the box office this year? We had all those TV blackouts because they weren't selling tickets in previous years. They're
Right.
getting some fannies in the seats this
They
year.
are, and you got to tip your hat to the New England fans too, and the other fans that come, because a lot of NFL fans circled that San Diego trip to come see their team. And boy, last week it was Foxborough West. There were a lot of Patriot fans there. The blackouts hadn't been that big of a problem this year, and attendance has been well.
In the short time we have left, what about the stadium here? Might this team actually move to L.A.? Could we get a stadium deal done yet? Who knows?
Absolutely yes on both.
Okay. All of the above. Huh?
You got it.
Well, yeah, and you're still going to have to, sooner or later, if there's going to be public money, raise some funds, pass a vote here with the taxpayers.
Yeah, there's been this odd thing where Mayor Faulkner has kind of wanted to stoke the conversation without actually proposing anything. You keep seeing stories on ESPN, of all places, that say, it's time to start a conversation about building a like, okay, well, start it. You are the mayor. You are in the position to start the conversation if you want.
All right, well, we'll see if they do and get down to the nitty-gritty as we go. That does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable, and I'd like to thank my guests, Taryn Mento of KPBS News, Andy Keats of The Voice of San Diego, and sports writer Jay Paris of 1090 Sports Radio. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.